Hello. Beep, 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 beep. Morning, peeps. How the devil are you? Welcome to the court of the EDIJester. Here we go again from Jester Towers. What have I got for you today? Well, it's been interesting. I've had an interesting evening. After teaching the war teachers yesterday, I had a conversation with somebody from the abroads, i.e., they weren't from here; they were from the USA, and it was great to have a conversation with them. And it was about the BBC, the Bubba. Now, you know as well as I do that many of us at the moment are currently a wee bit disappointed with the BBC, to say the least. A once brilliant organisation, which I'll come to in a minute, which has succumbed to EDI, DEI, therefore trans, race nonsense and equity and everything else, and seems to be more firmly embedded in it than anything else, obviously, because we see more of it than we do, for example, the NHS, the civil service, or any of the banks, who are also equally culpable in this nonsense. But it was interesting because the individual I was talking to, did not quite grasp and understand the significance of the BBC to British culture. And I thought that was fascinating. And that led on to us having a discussion about television in general. And the story of television in Britain is a fascinating one, believe it or not. So let's do a little bit about that for the next few minutes, just as something a bit different from the normal drum and strang that we find ourselves collaborating to destroy. The BBC's been with us a very long time indeed. It was it was the first broadcaster in the country. And when it first started, it was all terribly British. Good evening and welcome to the BBC. You had BBC English, the way that people spoke, as if people from the north, Scotland and Cornwall didn't exist. That's how it used to be. And it has done some extraordinary things in its time. Some extraordinary things. And there is a sort of cultural, if you will, thread that goes through Britain that is the direct result of the BBC. But it's, in its current form, is unrecognisable from what people my age would have seen as the BBC when we grew up. And it really was so central to informing the British public about certain things, and particularly certain things like when it came to the rights of others. Interestingly, from the point of view of the person I was speaking to last night, were both gay men. So it was interesting to be able to say to him, look, Panorama, which was a great BBC programme, covered both homosexuality and lesbianism in the early 60s during the debate about decriminalisation of homosexuality, as well as covering the Wolfenden Report. These things exist. They're on YouTube. They're amazing. We used some of them in one of the sessions of the Warrior Teachers. This is the kind of conversations that were going on around that time, and the BBC reflected those conversations. It didn't have this kind of ideological agenda that it seems to have now. It was much more informative, as well as obviously giving us programmes to watch that were entertaining, even if some of them would now be seen as racist and atrocious and all the stuff that comes with it. It was, to a certain degree, a reflection of the UK public. It was. It also gave us things like Cathy Come Home, which many of you won't remember, but I genuinely suggest you go and have a look and find out what it was. Because Cathy Come Home had a significant effect on how our country operates. And it was shown to me in my first year, I think it was first year of secondary school, it would have been, that I saw Cathy Come Home. And it's disturbing stuff, right? About this poor woman, the story of this poor woman. But it had a real effect on the public in terms of understanding exactly what the situation could be for those that found themselves in poverty in Britain in that period of the 60s. It also gave us Threads. And if you haven't seen Threads, you're missing out. Threads was about a nuclear disaster. It's one of the most terrifying films you'd ever seen. A progeny of the War Games, which is a previous film about nuclear war. This was the BBC that I grew up with. This was the BBC that gave us Life on Earth and still continues to give us some fantastic programmes. But they didn't have this tinge, this EDI, DEI tinge, which has destroyed it now in my mind and in the mind of others. It also gave us Doctor Who. Where would I be without Doctor Who? I'm an absolute fanatic when it comes to Doctor Who. First shown on the same Saturday as JFK got shot, and then shown again the following Saturday because nobody watched it. That's what Doctor Who started with. There's a fantastic TV programme called Adventure in Time and Space, which was when Matt Smith was the Doctor. It told the story of how Doctor Who originated, including where the theme tune came from, the work of Verity Lambert, a great pioneering female within the BBC ranks in the early days. Also, the director was Waris Hussain, who I believe was from India, who went on to become a very famous director. This was the BBC doing what the BBC does best, creating something that has lasting effect and a legacy. So where did it go wrong? It's got to be EDIDI, hasn't it? Would EDIDI give us, I don't know, I Claudius now? Will we get I Claudius now? There'll be people that haven't seen I Claudius. Can you believe it? One of the greatest television shows ever made, with acting that knocks most things out of the park. Would we have the play for today? Would that have existed? If we lived in the EDIDI world that we live now, would the BBC have been able to take chances like that, or in their production of Dracula? Or all their bodice ripping stuff? You know, the kind of, oh, Mr. Darcy. They do that so well, don't they? They do that so well. Upstairs, downstairs, was that the BBC? I think that might have been commercial television. So BBC, knock it by all means, and I do, believe me. But I can't get rid of it. People keep saying to me, for God's sake, cancel your... They're disgusting. They are disgusting. But the BBC is huge. I think this EDIDI thing is coming from a few people at the top that need to be fired. That's what I think. So anyway, on the back of the conversation, I said to the guy, look, if you want to understand BBC television, he's got a VPN, by the way. Get on the BBC website and look at BBC iPlayer, and I recommend that you do the same. Currently, if you can get on the BBC website and you have a look, they've got a thing called From the Archives. And in that From the Archives section, there is So-and-so Remembers. So it'll be Patricia Routledge remembers Keeping Up Appearances. Or it'll be, you know, John Cleese remembers Faulty Towers. I don't think that one's in there, but Faulty Towers. Genius. What's wrong with people? Faulty Towers, for goodness sake. What was the other one with Victor Meldrew? See? All this good stuff. So-and-so remembers so-and-so. Now, when they do it, they generally put what's being remembered onto the iPlayer. And they've done that with two things that I particularly recommend you watch. And that is, they are, I should say, from Stephen Polyakov Remembers. And he remembers Shooting the Past and Perfect Strangers. And you've got to watch them in that order. Shooting the Past and Perfect Strangers. If you want to understand the power of narrative, which warrior teachers live by the power of narrative, our ability to tell stories, our ability to tell a better story. If you want to understand the power of narrative, I could not recommend more heartily that you spend a few hours, and it will be a few, first watching Shooting the Past, and then watching Perfect Strangers. Because they are the best things I know to show the power of narrative. Anyway, that was my rant for today. I just want to say a bit about the BBC, because I'm sad about it. I don't know whether you are. You tell me. Are you sad about it? Because I'm sad about it. BBC that gave us Like Claudius, that gave us Doctor Who, that gave us Play for Today, that gave us Panorama. What does it give us now? Bullshit. EDIDI bullshit. That's what it gives us now most of the time. It's absolutely appalling. Anyway, that's it. Go on, go do your thing. I want to do something different for a time. I'll see you later.